Alex Ansary here for January 14th, 2017. In today's video, I'm going to stress the importance of not letting technology replace a relationship with our true selves. I think this is actually one of the first times I've done a video on this specific topic. I've talked about technology being used as a propaganda tool. Not only as a liberator, in some cases for us to get our word out, for some of us to access information when we use the tool mindfully, but a lot of people are going on autopilot. You know, they're going through their feed on their little smartphone, but they're not being too smart about it and using the right discernment. And so it's used as a propaganda tool for a lot of people, and with these algorithms and ways that they target ads to certain people, they also target propaganda to certain susceptible minds. So, I've talked about technology as a propaganda tool. I've talked about women using technology to replace a healthy relationship with a male. So we've talked about technology and its various mind control applications. We've also talked about the pluses of technology. And I've talked about impacting the hive mind, if you will, or the, for lack of a better terminology, collective consciousness with information that the masses can use. Information that can help set them free from the Borg consciousness. So with technology, it's a double-edged sword, but how do we avoid the trap that a lot of people fall into? Technology being something that blocks them from being responsible for their own personal evolution. And what does that mean? I'll tell you what, there's a quote that I've had for years. You can take the person out of Babylon. You can't necessarily take Babylon or the Babylonian programming out of the person once you take them out of that environment, for example. So I've met a lot of people in my travels, different off-grid areas. As I have moved on from living in a major city, I've lived in places like Dallas, Portland. I've also lived in various off-grid places. Live in a great place now. Of course, snowed in at the moment. One of the coldest places, or snowiest, not so much coldest, but with regards to snow, absolutely. And so it's really a step back from a society that's enjoying all the luxuries of technology, you know, cheap internet, Wi-Fi, other things, mass transportation. There's a reason why there is something very therapeutic about going off-grid, but can someone still be so tapped into information sources that they're being affected by it that it can block them from having a true relationship with themselves or the creator or accessing real gnosis? Can someone stay as far away from gnosis, i.e. knowledge? Knowledge is what gnosis means in Greek. Just like archons means authorities or rulers, doesn't necessarily automatically have an extraterrestrial connotation. It has an actual origin, where the word archon comes from, albeit it has different interpretations. Well, so does the word gnosis or gnostic, knowledge, or to know, or to seek knowledge. And aren't we living in the day of the persecution of the seeker of knowledge, or the truther, or the one seeking knowledge or truth? And so what we're looking at is a situation in which a lot of people may have access to the healing benefits of nature and being in an area that is, not polluted with smog, for example. They have beautiful trees. But can their heavy access to toxic propaganda, Fox News, disinformation, media sources, can that still prevent them from having a real relationship with themselves? Absolutely. So just living an off-grid way of life isn't enough. Faith without works is dead. You've heard this before. And I often talk about how a lot of people that are off-grid, for example, you would think that they would be more independent, but in reality you're dealing with the same sort of consciousness. Now, with regards to myself, if I want to have a really deep relationship with myself, or to be let's say in a peaceful state of consciousness, not fearful, not auto-reactive, but holding my grounding, it would be hiking, seeing new places, reading a book, preferably a good book, something to that effect, maybe watching a decent movie, maybe writing a little bit. There's also, the power of writing and using more aspects of the brain as opposed to typing, and I think that I may be doing more of that in the near future. And I get to find out again the differences in my mood regarding how much access I have to the internet. Now, being off-grid, I've been in situations where I have no access to the internet, situations where I can have all the access to the internet that I want. And so I've made it my goal to ration, months ago, at least half a year ago, the amount of YouTube that I watch, from watching a lot of YouTube to my YouTube viewage going down, down, down. Now, in some cases, I'll download quality documentaries or feature reports or certain things that I think are of merit on YouTube. But for the most part, watching YouTube for entertainment. Of course, there are these periods where it's winter and we all like a good holiday movie. I like my fair share of trigger-happy TV, for example, as far as stupid, funny stuff, but not as degrading as, say, Jackass. So, I have my guilty pleasures, just like people may like their snacks and their candy. And, I enjoyed myself some nice little peanut brittle, knowing, gee, I wonder what's in this, as it tastes so good. But it's like, we watch things that aren't so good for us as well because of that quick reflex entertainment, reward, stimuli in the brain. So none of us are perfect. So I've seen my own habits and how over time, with an internet situation where it's not unlimited, it is limited, but it's better than it was before. So I can still watch a few movies. For the most part, throughout my day, I'm not watching a bunch of movies. I'm actually using the internet as a tool. But even with regards to that, can a little go a long way? Well, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world. And when someone is absorbing a lot of information, it can affect them. A lot of it is programming to get us to be in this, okay, and even with regard to Donald Trump, what's he going to do now? Okay, ban all Muslims. And then people are freaking out with regards to those that don't support Trump but are freaked out about what he's going to do, as well as those that are on the other side. They're working both sides, folks, as I've talked about. The name of the game is fear. So the more someone is exposed to that, the more they're online, the more they're on Google, the more they're looking at that, the more they're clicking and going, oh, and the more they're reading the comments, and the more they're seeing the hateful comments from others on Facebook, the more they're exposed to it. That can take them away from themselves. So the internet, double-edged sword. We can use it to put out good information and get good information, and we can also put out propaganda or fake news, or be reading fake news. We are transmitter receivers. The internet, here I have satellite internet, 7,500 feet off the grid in southwest Colorado, is literally transmitting and receiving. And I'm using it as a tool to receive information and transmit my ideas out there. But can a little go a long way? Absolutely. So, we have things like writing. We have things like reading books. We have things like meditation. We have things like martial arts or qigong or yoga for some people, or dancing. Body movement, also known as body meditation or moving meditation. All very important. The art of cooking. I don't really have a lot to brag about, but, I am an advocate of cooking your own food, making things that taste good, not being a health nut, but, if someone's going to go off-grid, learn to bake. Got the Coleman ovens. If you like meat dishes or things like that, like most people, do your stir fries, enjoy cooking with less, something as simple as a one-burner stove. It doesn't have to be fancy. Have enough supplies. And the idea is, see, society, make another off-grid mention. Civilization, there's a lot of trinkets and bubbles and rewards for people that live in the city. Things are cheaper. But when you have less access to technology, less access to those resources, less access to entertainment, less access to other people, you got to find ways to entertain yourself. And you can do that a mindful way or an unmindful way. So why drink yourself to sleep every night, living off-grid, with repeat trips to town or things of that nature? And why not jump into a book? Oh, there's a book here I picked up randomly. Let's go over the brief books that I picked up at the thrift store, because with regards to mindfully manifesting, it's not so much having anything you want, but being able to manifest certain things that are very much within reach. But everybody becoming a billionaire? I don't know about that. So I think about every time I'm at the thrift store in town, grabbing a book or finding a book that I never found before that'll be of interest later on, that'll help educate me about something very, very interesting. There's a book upstairs Not going to grab it now. I'm going to talk about it in a future video, but it's from a woman that believes that she's been abducted by aliens. The spin on this book is she seems to have a sort of Stockholm syndrome where the aliens are good and it's just the MILAB, the military projects, that are bad. So I think it's going to be an interesting study with regards to whatever they did to her. We'll talk about that in a future video. So I often think about information finding me. And so when I'm at the thrift store, I will find information finding me, and I will use my intuition and go, yeah, you know, that's a book that I'll grab. It'll provide some bit of knowledge or information to me in some way, shape, or form. The Chinese Book of Wisdom is what this is called, and it looks like it covers various areas. Chinese wisdom, so it covers some of the philosophies there. Health and medicine. Horoscopes and prophecies, Chinese way of life. So it's like the best of China, if you will. And I always have had an affinity for the Chinese people, not the Chinese government. Dan Millman, Everyday Enlightenment. Some of you are familiar with Dan Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Great book on some levels, where he has a teacher who works at a gas station who goes by the name of Socrates. And I believe they made a movie about it. So anyways, when I see stuff like this, even if I don't have the inspiration to read it now, at some point, I will later. Solar Flare. I picked this one up as soon as I saw it. Talks about the Cardington event and what happened in 1859. And this is a fictional account. From a perspective of a professor who tried to warn people when there was time, he was laughed at. And then one day, it was for real. And here's what happened. Book written in the 1990s. Here's a book by Nick Rosen, Off the Grid, Inside the Movement for More Space, Less Government, and True Independence in Modern America. It's kind of like Jay Ronson's Them, which is not a bad book, but from the experience of someone going around to these different areas which he contacted in order to write a book and see how they live off the grid. It would be definitely interesting to see something written about Costilla County in terms of a book format. And the off-grid movement today, and the land rights disputes that have popped up in recent years. Games Without Rules is a book by my father's cousin, Timmy Mansouri, and it is a very good, definitive history of Afghanistan, the multiple nations and superpowers that try to invade Afghanistan, some of the politics going on in Afghanistan before the Russians invaded, during the invasion, and afterwards. And I'm going to be doing a report later on, not only about the Russian invasion of Afghanistan and the idea of the West and Russia playing both sides to destabilize Afghanistan with their proxy war, hot war on the ground, Cold War between Russia and the U.S., but a coordinated proxy war to destabilize Afghanistan. In addition, going even deeper into history and the history of the Russian pullout and the Afghans fighting themselves. So you had the actual Afghan rebels, genuine mujahideen, and you had the outside Arabs, Osama bin Laden's homies, and the Taliban, all funded by the West, and Pakistan's ISI. The West should be reminded of that period of the Civil War, in which the Afghans, the genuine freedom fighters, were fighting the Taliban, but they weren't funded by the West or the Russians. No one funded them. The ones that got the funding were the radicals. And so, the history of Afghanistan. So something about stepping back from technology and that all you can watch YouTube nonsense and books that take you deeper into the idea, that's part of it. Writing, of course, writing. We have a little bit of an issue here with the light. And see, this is an example of me going, and I'm going to leave all this in the video. I'm going to start up the RV. My generator, I'll talk about that when I got back. But if I start up the RV, I'll be able to run that light.